Happy Tears Day. Let's talk about winter. So I've just finished a long drive coming up to Bicester from Kent, and as you do on a long drive, or as I do, had plenty of thoughts, working through things, thinking about things, and up until probably the last section of the journey, I had in mind making this video and some conclusions that I wanted to make, and then the weather happened, and it reminded me that just those sections of separation. Let's say it's 116 miles, I think, from home to get to here. Heading north-ish, or heading north, so up the country, because it felt very much like last week winter had its last throw at us in Kent. Already it seems like the weather has not necessarily improved, because it was really windy yesterday. It's been wet rather than the snow last week, but the temperature's improved. However, arriving in Bicester, it's just that sort of, the rain is kind of sleet-like, and it's probably just a short adjustment from being snow. It's colder, and it just lets you sort of think about things. So, I mean, because of the strong winds we've had at home in Kent, I had to go out into the garden yesterday to close the gate, 'cause it had been forced open by the wind and it kept slamming, and it was annoying for me, as I'm sure it was probably annoying for the neighbours. However, the good thing about going out into the back garden, because I haven't really been out there during the winter, just sort of left it to its own devices, and being out there and sort of starting to gear myself up to do gardening, you can see that there's buds, signs of spring. And that's one of the things that's really been sort of on my mind, is obviously here in the UK we celebrate spring, or we don't necessarily celebrate, we acknowledge spring and autumn, whereas for Norse paganism it's winter and summer. And that got me thinking. As I say, that's one of the things I've been sort of perusing through thoughts concerning. And it's really, I feel, comes down to a combination of a couple of things. Really, the Scandinavians have extreme weather. And I know this because we've got friends in Scandinavia that I game with, and it's always humbling to sort of go, oh, winter, it's biting now. It's just like it's -2 outside, and your friend that you're going with goes, yeah, it's -30 here. Yeah. Speaking to my good friend Anita yesterday, she's just come back from Denmark. She lives in the UK, and obviously we had our snow last week, and as she was leaving Denmark, they were getting more snow. So there, what we have really, when I think about it, is a relativity to the environment that gets created in the stories and the songs that are told, that have been passed down. Because if you're in Scandinavia with extreme weathers, then it's probably hard to or there probably isn't a great deal of difference between winter and summer to have sort of like a spring period and an autumn period. It's probably just sort of the two make sense. Whereas being in the UK, where we've got a similar yet not so similar environment, we've got, I suppose, greener land, if you like, and the seasons, the 4 seasons, are probably more noticeable. I mean, it gets you thinking that obviously, sort of, if we're all descended from Germanic tribes, or let's just call it Central Europe, there have been migration periods away from that centre, and I can say we've probably been blessed for those that headed sort of over to this country, as opposed to the ones that went, we'll head north. It reminds me of a Billy Connolly joke when he's talking about sort of the people who discovered Scotland, and sort of saying just like, no, I mean, it's Billy Connolly. I mean, it's certain things where he tells jokes about why the Scottish people are got such white skin, and sort of making a joke. No, let's head there. It's colder. Obviously, I don't have Billy Connolly's skills of delivery to tell jokes or the full details. I'm going off of memories. Go watch Billy Connolly. But it's that sort of people headed west, people headed north. They spread out. And obviously, as these cultures then settled in different areas, their culture and practice evolved. Those that were left behind probably naturally evolved also. And then there are other migrations or invasions or whatever you want to call them, sharing of cultures, where sort of people that all originated from certain areas met in different places, and there were significant changes that you can look at an underlying sort of belief system, but there'd been adjustments. And that leads you to sort of acknowledge, at least, or try and realise that where you are makes an awful lot of difference, and that it's important to have an eye on where you're going or where you've come from. They're important, but where you are is perhaps the most important thing. Now, that may, let's say, acknowledging 4 seasons may make me, I don't know, neo-pagan rather than Norse pagan. They're labels, and I'm not really interested in them, because I try to look at what the underlying truths are, rather than sticking to sort of what's other people want to tell me, I guess. We get these things where people try to argue their points of view on you, and I'll be the first to sort of say, well, really, Seth was saying this yesterday, your relationship with the gods is between you and the gods. What works for those guys over there or those guys over there may not necessarily be wrong, isn't wrong, or it's what they do. You can try that and it might be okay, but however, what you're doing is you're just, well, it works for them, so I'm going to do that, and hopefully it'll work for me, and maybe it will. However, are you giving something of yourself in this cycle of reciprocity if you're just copying what other people are doing. You need to make your own connection. And when you make that connection, could very well be different to what the guys who have their practice over there doing, the guys over there who have their practice doing, and you're doing something completely different. 3 different ways of having this relationship with the gods, and then you get, people start arguing that you're doing it wrong. And it's just like, well, no, not necessarily. The gods want to have a connection, and they don't necessarily want to have the same connection, especially if you're just copying someone's homework. I'll always be one to say the gods know what's in your heart. That's what the connection has to be. And it may put you to the test when you get sort of these different factions saying you're doing things wrong. And it's up to you how you deal with that. Where you are is your perspective. Work from that. Should be okay. Take guidance. Yes, take guidance. But don't abandon your judgment when it comes to making decisions about yourself. And yeah, it is easy to feel sort of peer pressure. However, it's just sort of, that is a test on you. And whether, to coin a phrase, you are worthy of, the gods or not. Even what I'm saying now, don't have to listen to, as that's only relevant to me in many ways. You can't lead a horse to water. A lot of people are happy following a crowd and following the advice of people, and that's okay. You get what you give, and that's the gifting cycle. Make it work for you. I'm looking forward to what's now on the horizon this weekend coming up. The signs of spring. The signs of spring are sort of creative. It inspires to see nature waking up now that winter has passed, or is passing. And there's a whole load of things about winter I want to talk about, and I feel like I've slightly gone off course as I've rambled. However, I think there's some extra videos to be made there about, in particular, winter as a time of death and life. I'll maybe get into that in the next few days. In particular, because I think this is something that Odin features in heavily. I'll maybe talk about it tomorrow on his day. And obviously sort of runes as well. I've kind of made a casual decision not to have a new rune day last week, and I've continued with Perfro and Ingwaz, and now sort of I know which runes I will be working with from tomorrow to carry with me into the weekend with the gathering we're having. And they make sense to me, and they're sort of ambitious, if you like, because it's all about sort of seeing sort of what has gone on in winter now start to bud as spring sort of opens up to us all, and we can look forward to making our plans or seeing our plans come to fruition, or the promise of fruition, as that we make our way through sort of the yearly cycle. Ramble over with. Look at that hair hanging out there. Be gone. Thank you very much for listening to me. If you have done, it is appreciated, and I hope sincerely that some of these rambles really do help you find your path, what works for you. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.